Welcome back to our next video lesson. This is Professor Robert Solis. We're going to be talking about creating a circle calculator, but we're specifically going to use functions. And remember what I had stated before in a previous lecture about subs. Subs are a chunk of code that you call upon them and they do something, some particular task, but they don't return anything back to you. That's not what a function does. A function will actually, you can call upon it to do something, but then it'll return a result to you, and that's what we're going to be working on today. So what I've done is I've just created a quick circle calculator graphical user interface. I'm going to ask the user to enter the radius, and so we're going to call that txt radius. They're going to click this button, which I've called btn calculate, and then when the calculate button is pressed, we're going to determine what the area and the circumference. I've got LBL area for this label, and I've got LBL circumference for this label. All right, so at this point we're ready to go into the code area, so I'll double click the calculate button, and let me go ahead and type in some comments such as declarations, get user input, calculation, and then finally output. All right, now what I want to do is I want to be able to call a function to return the area, say for example. So what I'll do is I'll type the word function, and then we'll determine what the name of this function should be. So we want to be able to calculate and return whatever the value is for the area. So we'll say calculate area, and then I'll have a parentheses. So first of all, calculate area is the name of the function. So if I want to call upon this, I type in calculate area, and in this particular case, this thing needs a radius. So what I can do is this. I can say by val, which means that I am passing a value by copying and pasting it. So I'm going to copy this value, and let's see here, what shall we call it? We'll say something like radius parameter as a double. It is possible for someone to send me a radius of 3.5 or 4.7, say for example. So that's why I'm making it a double. If I made it an integer, then I could only send a whole number. All right, let me tab outside here and type in as, and then type in the word double, and then press enter. So let me explain what this does. The part inside of the parentheses, we call that the argument or the parameter. And what happens is, in order for calculate area to do its job, you need to give it a radius. So that's what it's saying here. Give me a radius, and then I can return to you a double, namely by calculating the area. So it's going to calculate the area and return that value back to you. So clearly you see that this is a function. If this were a sub, I would have typed the word sub, and you wouldn't see this as whatever at the very end. Because this thing has to return something, that's the nature of a function, that's why you see this part out here, which we didn't see for subs. I'm going to do my job because you gave me this. Then I'm going to return to you a double when I'm finished. That's how you read this statement. Okay? All right. Well, what are we going to do? We're going to return the area of a circle, and that's going to be pi r squared. So we are going to return, and then pi is math.pi. That's a tool that's already available in the math library. So this is going to be pi times, and then r squared. Well, that's r to the second power. Hey, we have a math tool for that. It's called math.pow. And so I basically have the base that I'm going to type, comma, and then the exponent. Well, what is the formula again? Pi r squared. So it's the radius. Oh, you gave me the radius. It's called radius parameter. So radius parameter, comma. Now remember, pi r squared. So the squared means it's to the second power. So what I'll do is I'll just put the number 2.0 over here, and then I'll press enter. So when I call upon calculate area, I've got to give it a radius parameter. It takes that radius parameter, it squares it using the math.pow function. It's going to multiply it times pi, and then whatever that mathematical feature is, or whatever that mathematical result is, it's going to return it. Okay, so let me call this version 1. That's like a really concise one line of code, takes care of everything. Now I'm going to place a comment right here just to say that's version 1. Let me show you version 2. Version 2 would, for example, would be for me to say, okay, so let me create a variable, and we're going to call that variable area, say for example, as a double. Now, area is going to be math.pi times math.pow, and then radius parameter squared. And then I return area. So this is a perfectly acceptable way as well to determine what the area is. As you can see here, a little bit more lines of code, 1, 2, 3 lines of code. I've created a variable called area. I've established what the area is. It's going to be pi times r squared. And then I'm returning what that value of area has just been calculated to be. So you can use version 1 over here, which is 1 line concise, or you can use version 2, a couple of extra lines. That's perfectly acceptable. Someone might argue, this is readable, right? I mean, I could see step by step what's happening. Another person might argue, this is really efficient. It's very efficient. So again, it's up to you. No big deal either choice. So I have a function to determine what the area is called calculate area. And let's now do the same thing for circumference. So I'm going to place my cursor right over here, hit enter a couple times, and I will create a new function. So I'll type in the word function. This time I'm going to calculate the circumference. All right, so in order for this guy to do its job, it needs the radius. So what I'm going to give to you by value is this thing called radius parameter, and it's a double. Now, you have to return, when you're finished, a double. Let me spend a little bit more time with this word over here, by value. I've given before the analogy of me having a Frisbee, and I write the number 10 on it, and I want to send that Frisbee to you, but I don't want to send you the original. So let me clone that Frisbee. So here I have just duplicated a Frisbee. I threw you the copy, and I keep the original. That's exactly what this by val is like. By value just simply means I am not giving you the original. I'm giving you a copy. I retain the original for myself. Now, if I typed by ref, now what that means is I'm actually giving you the original value. You have access to the original memory location where this thing is being stored. So that's analogous to me throwing you an original Frisbee with the number 10 on it. You get with your Sharpie, you add a 0, so you made that 10 100. You send it back to me. I have no idea what the original was. The original has been lost because now I get that Frisbee back with the number 100 on it. It's been modified. The original has been modified. Okay? So later on, we'll start talking about why would you use by value and why would you use by ref. There's a strategy to that. For right now, I just want you to understand what it is. Okay? So baby steps. Right now, you know that if I type in by value, you're thinking to yourself, copy and paste. If I type in by ref, you're thinking to yourself, oh, he's sending me the original. Okay? So either you're cloning something, sending me the copy, you keep the original, or you're actually sending me the original if I typed in by ref. In this case, I'm going to send you a copy of the radius, and here we're going to call it radius parameter. And so what I'm going to do is return to you the circumference of a circle. So I'm going to return to you, and the circumference of a circle is 2 pi r. So it's 2 times pi times the radius, which in this case we're calling the radius parameter. I meant pi, sorry. Pi. 2 pi r. That's the circumference. Okay, so that is version 1, where everything is nice and concise. One statement returns everything. Let me give you version 2. So let me just temporarily comment this out. Version 2 might be that you actually create a variable called circumference as a double. You calculate what the circumference is, and of course that's going to be 2 times pi times the radius, and then you return the circumference. Both of these methods work. Method 1, method 2, they both work. One is more concise, the other one kind of makes it more readable by breaking out the steps of what you're doing. And there we have it. You have these two tools. It's like as if you decide, I need a tool to be able to hammer nails into wood, because using these rocks, I mean, it works, but then the rock breaks, and I got to get another rock. You know, it'd be great if I could invent a tool, so then all of a sudden you invent a hammer. Okay? And so this hammer, this tool that you've created, you can use it over and over and over again. Here is a tool right here. Pretend that this tool is a hammer. Pretend that this tool is a screwdriver. You get to use those tools over and over and over again. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to actually create the code to display the results of the area and also the circumference in those two labels. So what I'll do, I'll go back over here, and I need to get the user input. So what I'll do is I'll say dim radius, because that's what the user is going to give to me as double. Under the get user input section, the radius is going to be convert dot to double whatever is inside of the text box text txt radius dot text. Now I think what I'll do is I'll combine this calculation and output section together, because I have these functions that I can use. So specifically I can do this. I can say LBL area dot txt text. Let's put the result of our function which calculates the area. What is that thing called? Okay, now don't type anything. It's not really a mistake what I'm doing, what I'm about to do. It's more just like allowing Visual Basic to automatically do something when really I should be more, more of a purist programmer. But watch what I'm doing first, and then we can type. Well, I know that there is a function called calculate area, and I know that I can give it the radius. See, I got to give it a radius parameter, or I got to give it a double more specifically. And what is this thing going to do? It's going to return a double. I'm sorry, I got to give it the radius. Okay, so I give it the radius, and what does this thing return? Look at this over here. It's going to go away when I move my mouse, but focus your eyes over here. See how it says double? So this thing returns a double. Can you put a double into a text property? Well, no, I mean, you can't technically do that. Now, Visual Basic says you can't do that. So you know what I'm going to do for you? I'll convert it to a string for you. So that's called implicit conversion. But you know what? We like to be explicit. We like to tell our future self or our future programmers that are going to be maintaining this what we're actually doing. So I really should have typed this. Convert dot to string, open and close parentheses, and then I put this inside of there. So I cut and paste. Okay, so now this is really what you guys should type. That's why I said don't type it first. This is really what you should do. Will the other thing work that I typed? Yes, it will, because Visual Basic says, wait a minute, what's this guy trying to do? He's trying to put a double into a text property? We can't do that, so why don't we help him out by converting it for him implicitly? What this does is it converts explicitly. You are telling the compiler, hey, take the radius, send it to this calculate area. I know that you're going to give me back a double, convert that double into a string, and then put that into the text property of the label. Okay? And we're about to do the same thing for the LBL circumference.text. So now that we know, we can call a function called calculate circumference. Calculate circumference is going to return a double, so we might as well convert to string. I'm going to put the open and close parens, put my cursor right back inside there. I'm going to call a function called calculate. There it is. Calculate circumference. Let me double click that. Put a parentheses, and it's telling me you need to give me a double, specifically some sort of a radius parameter. And what will I do? I will return to you a double, namely the circumference that I just calculated. Okay, so I need to give you the radius, because that's what I've got over here. I got that from the user. All right, and then let me see, let me close that parentheses here, press enter. Let me save my work and run the program. All right, so we're finished. I'm going to move this over here so that you can see the code area over here. So let me enter a radius of 1. So the area is this, the circumference is this. Let me enter a radius of 1.5, say for example. So we have this. Let me enter a radius of 2, say for example, 2.2 maybe, so forth and so on, right? So if I enter a radius of 2, you'll notice that both of the answers are the same, and that's because 2 pi r, or pi r squared for the number 2, that's the same answer. So that's okay. So forth and so on, right? Any number that you type, it's going to give you the area and the circumference. Wow, sure looks like we have a lot of numbers after here, after the decimal point. Maybe we can limit the numbers, I don't know, maybe like 1 number after the decimal point, or 2 numbers after the decimal point. Okay, so let me close the program. I'm going to comment both of these. So this is like version 1. Okay. So we'll do the same thing over here, LBL area.text, LBL circumference.text, but the goal is to make it so that this thing is going to return a string with, I don't know, 2 numbers after the decimal point, say for example. So it's the same thing, LBL area.text is going to be. Now, this time I really am going to call this function without converting to string. I'm going to call this function calculate area. I'm going to give you the radius. All right, so now watch this. Dot toString, in parentheses I put F2. What this says is I want you to display 2 numbers after the decimal point. How about I want you to display this 3 numbers after the decimal point, 1 number after the decimal point. So we can determine how many numbers after the decimal point we want. Now this is a little bit different than over here. This one says convert.toString. This one over here has the actual function call. Once you give me back a double, see this thing? Put your eyes over here. See this thing returns a double right here? Well, I'm going to take you double and convert you into a string, specifically a formatted string that has 2 numbers after the decimal point. And let's do the same thing for circumference. LBL circumference.text. Well, I have a function called calculate circumference, and according to this, for you to do your job, you need a double. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the radius, because that's what you need to be able to do your job. Now, you're going to return a double. I'm going to take you and convert you into a string, specifically a formatted string with 2 numbers after the decimal point. So now let's see what happens when I run the code. So let's say that I type in the number 2, and sure enough, I get 2 numbers after the decimal point, or 3 or 4, whatever I want. So you have version 1, and then you have over here version 2 in terms of how you are going to be displaying the results for the circumference and also for the area. And that's it. All right, so this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.